Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, and I'm the founder and president of the Pixel Project. And today I'm moderating the second Google Hangout session of the fourth annual International Women's Day edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. So through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 11 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds towards the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise 1 million for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. So we'll be telling you a little bit more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has a ton of exclusive author goodies a little later in this session. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project and also about violence against women and what you can do to help your friends and family who are facing domestic violence, rape or sexual assault, female genital mutilation, so on and so forth, on our website at www.thepixelproject.net. So we have a very special guest with us today. We're going to have a live discussion and Q&A session with the fabulous Nebula-nominated steampunk fantasy author Beth Cato. Beth is the author of the Clockwork Dagger duology and the new Blood of Earth trilogy from Harper Voyager. Her newest novel is Call of Fire, and she's Hanford, California native transplanted to the Arizona desert, where she lives with her husband and son. Now, Beth has also generously donated an exclusive steampunk and snickerdoodle goodie bundle to the stash of author goodies that we have as perks on the Read for Pixels fundraising page. And that goodie bundle has a signed set of Wrath of Earth and Call of Fire, which is the first two books in the Blood of Earth trilogy, and also a container of her infamous, or rather famous, chewy honey snickerdoodle cookies. And somebody has already donated a generous $65 to get it. So I'm gonna put Beth on now so that we can both say together, thank you, Jamie Mayer. So thanks, Jamie, she's from Washington State. And we are so thrilled because this actually happened, Beth, before you even got on air. So thank you, Jamie, so much. So anyway, we still have a ton of author goodies available, and more released every Thursday and Friday throughout the month of March. So we have a huge pile. Check back. We'll tell you where to go in a bit, and check back every Friday. Every Friday, you'll see a whole bunch of new stuff from a whole bunch of authors, including Lee Bardugo, Susan Dennard, Kimberly Durting, Karen Rose, Kendare Blake, a whole bunch. Anyway, so now I'm going to hand it over to Beth, who's now on screen. Hi, Beth. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
And Beth, you're going to be reading a chapter for us, aren't you, today?
Yes, I'm going to be reading a chapter of Call of Fire.
Okay, so take it away.
Okay. Well, Call of Fire is the second book in my Blood of Earth trilogy.
Okay.
And it begins in 1906 San Francisco, but it's an alternate history novel. So it's a different type of world where the US and Japan are actually allied as a world power trying to dominate Asia. And this is also a world where there are lots of mythological creatures that aren't mythological, and geomancy plays a major role, especially in Breath of Earth to start, which was my take on rewriting the San Francisco earthquake. And in Call of Fire, my characters have escaped San Francisco and journeyed to the Pacific Northwest. And as it picks up, Ingrid and Cy are in downtown Portland, Oregon, when the Alaskan gold rush begins. Only in this timeline, it's not Alaska, but Baranov, still a Russian possession. They rush back to the airship dock to find a full riot underway as desperate men steal vessels so they can make their way north. As this begins, they have spotted one of their neighbors from the dock in a water basin. Gone? The palmetto bug was gone? The world wobbled around her. Where were Lee and Fenris? What happened? Ingrid snapped. Mr. Ito slipped on the slope. Sai reached to help and almost slid headfirst into the water. Both men flailed to find their footing. Mr. Ito's errant fist whacked Sai's face. Sai landed on his backside, but he had finally managed to grip Mr. Ito's arm. They staggered up the embankment. "Goma nasai, Mr. Jennings," Mr. Ito panted. "I did not mean to." "It was an accident, sir. Pay it no mind." "You said our airship was gone," Ingrid repeated, staring at Sai. "His glasses were missing. Damn it all, the man would be as blind as a worm." Sai glanced back at the slope with a dismissive shrug. "Hi!" Group of men rushed aboard, unmoored it. I did not see what happened next. Mr. Ito frowned at Ingrid, then focused on Sai again. "I thought I was safe with the hatch closed, but they broke through. As it took off, they threw me out." What sort of horrible people threw an unarmed innocent man off an airship in flight? Anger caused a small spike of pain in her arm. She couldn't see anyone else in the water. Could Lee swim? Chinese hadn't been allowed to use public pools or beaches around San Francisco, though he had surprised her with other skills recently. She doubted Fenris could swim either. He was averse to any activity that might reveal his slight natural curves to others. "Let's get under cover again," Sai said, motioning them toward the cars. "Did you see if both our companions were aboard when they took our ship?" Ingrid grabbed the bag and winced at her injury. "Hi, both men. Outside work was done. Stairs gone." Mr. Ito granted Sai a quick bow and headed toward the mob. "I must find Mr. Fujiwara. Domo arigato gozaimasu." "Sai, what are we going to do?" Ingrid murmured. "I don't know. Lord have mercy, but I don't know." More cars squealed to a stop at the northern access to the dock. Gunshots caused both Sai and Ingrid to drop to a crouch between cars. Feet pounded past them close by. Sai motioned her to stay put as he removed his hat. He tugged a switchblade from his pocket and slipped the blade along the lining of his hat. "What are you?" "A trick I learned a few years back, from one of Mr. Roosevelt's books, actually. When he was on the battlefield, he kept spare pairs of glasses sewn into his hat." He pried his fingers into the cloth lining and pulled out a small parcel wrapped in a rag. Another pair of pince-nez emerged. He planted them on the arch of his nose and grinned. "A gentleman is never without his hat, after all." "What a marvel," she said. "How many glasses do you have in there?" "Another pair, and more on the bug." "I guess it's prudent to avoid being smacked in the face again." "I must say, get smacked in the face is never something I add to my daily to-do list." He adjusted the derby hat on his head again. "Run! Run!" a man screamed. More gunshots punched the air. Sai and Ingrid hunkered lower. One thing was clear. They had to get away from here. Sai immediately led the way back through the cars, heading to the northern perimeter of the airship dock. Ingrid heard footsteps behind her. Someone grabbed the clothes bag, yanking her to a stop. She turned, in the process pulling the bag from a man's grip. He was a stocky fellow with a face like lumpy bread dough that had been dropped on a filthy floor. "Give me your money!" He brandished a Tesla rod of his own. She heard Sai shuffle behind her, likely drawing his own rod, but the space was narrow, and he couldn't defend her on this end. She didn't need him to. Of course. She reached for her pocket, but she didn't go for the gun. Instead, she whirled around, using her sliver of power to bash the man with a loaded laundry bag. His head met the trunk of an auto car with a satisfying crunch. She brought the bag down on his legs and used the blunt force to send him flying backward. His back and head struck the car on the other side. He slid to the ground, limp, as she brought up the bag again. "Ingrid, I think that's enough. Leave him be," Sai yelled. She was panting heavily. Hot blood drained down her raised arm, trickling to the armpit. "You're right. This is clean laundry. I don't want his blood to soak through the bag." More gunshots. More men rushing to the dock, away from the dock. Sai spared the time to grab the fallen man's Tesla rod and motion Ingrid forward. "Look for a running car, or one with keys left in the ignition." A man was sobbing nearby. Other voices overlapped. "We should get a ship for Seattle." "Let's get more of the boys and come back." "Gold! They say there's so much gold in the vein up there, it's like a river. All a man's got to do is stake a claim." "Carmichael!" A voice boomed over the chaos. Ingrid couldn't help but look up. An elegant auto car was idling in the empty road past the tingle of abandoned cars. A man stood by an open door, his hands cupped to his mouth. He saw Ingrid looking his way and waved. "Sai! Sai!" She grabbed him by the coattails. That man, I know him. He's Siegfried. He works for Roosevelt. As a secretary for the Cadilleron, she had come to know many of the most powerful men in the world by the companionship of their servants. Cy and Ingrid ran for the car. Siegfried flung open a back door. Ingrid threw the laundry bag into the dark interior, then herself. Cy's warm body landed beside hers. The instant he slammed the door shut, the driver hit the gas. The car reversed with a roar and made a tight turn away. Distinct familiar laughter brayed from feet away. 2 plush seats faced each other within the auto car, the seat across from them occupied. Delighted to see you alive and well, Miss Carmichael. Theodore Roosevelt embraced their thick laundry bag with both arms, his grin broad and brilliant. Ingrid had always been a bit intimidated by Mr. Roosevelt. Within the small space of the auto car, she was even more acutely aware of his dominating presence. 200 pounds of muscles were packed into his small frame. The walrus-like thickness of his neck strained his collar, while a tailored black jacket accentuated his broad shoulders. At a glance, anyone would know he was an athlete in top form, though no one would accuse him of being good-looking. His stiff brown hair was parted high and was clipped unflatteringly short, emphasizing the largeness of his head. A glossy bowler hat sat on the seat beside him. Lights, inset in the roof and sides of the car, seemed to be angled to set him aglow. It's good to see you too, sir, Ingrid bowed. Against the canvas bag, it was easy to see the large signet ring of an ambassador on Roosevelt's left hand. It looked just like the one worn by Blum. Ingrid sensed its enchantment like buzzing bumblebees. The ring afforded its wearer incredible protection against injury. It could only be removed by a quorum of the 12 ambassadors. Siegfried and the other men must have seen that Cy carried 2 Tesla rods, but no one expressed concern, and with reason. Those rings were said to be among the most powerful artifacts in the world due to their nearly impervious level of shielding. Pardon me, sir. Cy bobbed his head in apology. He set his hat on his lap and pulled away the laundry bag to rest at his feet. Roosevelt squinted at him. Both men wore pince-nez glasses. Do I know you, sir? My name's Cy Jennings, Mr. Roosevelt, sir. He seemed uncharacteristically nervous, and justifiably. Mr. Roosevelt undoubtedly knew his father, George Augustus, and had likely heard of Cy. After all, he'd been the brilliant inventor of the Durandal, a young man who tragically died in an airship crash, or so the newspapers said. Cy had spent the past dozen years a deserter from the military. Here before him was a man who deemed military service akin to godliness. Roosevelt also had a memory as keen as Excalibur's blade. He memorized whole books after a single reading, and recalled faces and names years after brief meetings. Ingrid weighed what to say. Secrets seemed to be the currency of the day. They needed Roosevelt as an ally, but they couldn't tell him everything. Certainly nothing about Cy's true identity. The presence of the 3 men in the front seat, their heads visible through the small window, only complicated things more. Sir, Mr. Sakaguchi advised us to go to you, but what we need to say shouldn't be for your ears only. You're concerned about my men. I trust them with my life, Miss Carmichael. Begging your pardon, sir, but our lives are substantially more fragile than yours. She certainly felt her own frailty now. Exertion and adrenaline were causing her whole body to tremble. She pressed her knees together to steady herself. Mr. Roosevelt's arms sprawled against the back of his seat as he fixed his level gaze on her. I trust them with the very welfare of the United States of America. They hear secrets but do not repeat them. What you wish to say, they may very well already know. He tapped on the glass. 2 of the men tilted their heads. Gentlemen, did you know Miss Ingrid Carmichael here is the only known woman geomancer in the world and one of titanic skill? Yes, sir, said all 3 men in a slightly offbeat chorus. Indignation caused Ingrid to open and close her mouth several times without being able to form coherent speech. She'd certainly never been privy to the late-night conversations between Mr. Sakaguchi and Mr. Roosevelt, so it was possible that Siegfried had been in attendance for those talks. He had been a regular fixture with Mr. Roosevelt, though he often ended up in the kitchen, where he knew Mama usually had cookies or pies of which he could partake. These other men, though, they were strangers. Strangers who had also kept counsel well enough that Blum hadn't suspected anything about Ingrid's power until the events of the past week. Ingrid didn't like her hand being forced like this. But she also knew there was no time to dawdle. If she and Cy couldn't trust Roosevelt and his men, they were already as good as tanned.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think I'm echoing a little bit, but I'm gonna just put myself momentarily on the screen. Okay, hi guys. If you have just joined us, we are here with Beth Cato today for Read for Pixels for International Women's Day and Women's History Month, in support of the Pixel Project's work to end violence against women. And if you have any questions, all of you who are out there, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box next to the screen on the YouTube page you're watching this on. Anusha is today's chat box moderator, and she will relay the questions to me to read out to Beth to answer. And so we're gonna go straight into the discussion session now with Beth. Let me put Beth back on screen. So thank you so much for that wonderful reading, Beth. Let's start the discussion by talking about female characters. So your books feature a wide range of female characters who are independent, intelligent, and determined women and girls from different walks of life who go through tough personal journeys. So who and what are the inspirations behind your female characters?
Oh, I think a lot of the women I've known in my life and women in my family. I've known many strong women, and when I read books, I don't always see women who are like that, especially if I read more golden age science fiction, which I find very frustrating to go through often. And I want to show how women can be strong, but not be stereotypical in that. Like in my Clockwork Dagger books, Octavia is a healer with magic. And for me, that was very personal to write that because I love role-playing games. I loved playing the healer. I loved white wizards, priestesses, whatever form they took in games or even in books. But in books, they were never the main character. They were always the convenient side character to keep the big burly heroes alive. And I really wanted to show a protagonist, a heroine, whose main strength was her compassion, and that is what governs her and what she does, and how it gets her in trouble sometimes, but it also is her power, even greater than her own magic.
Yeah, and it is, talking about stereotypes, and as you said, there are plenty of female stereotypes in fantasy. So for you yourself personally as a writer in your process, how do you break these stereotypes in the genre to create empowered female characters of agency? How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think foremost it means reading a lot, and reading diversely, reading contemporary fantasy, reading older fantasy, reading young adult, recognizing when I encounter stereotypes, or when I really love it when a character presents themselves as a stereotype, but then they become alive because the author is skilled enough to bring in deft twists to make the character really shine. And really, by reading a lot, that's when you gain skills. You have to learn to realize it, to read as a technical skill for writing and break down what makes it work. Like when I was first starting to write novels and I wanted to write in first person, I really studied C.E. Murphy's Urban Shaman series. And that really taught me how to write first person and write a strong female character who's going to stand up there with all the guys and beat the guys and handle, godly power essentially and shamanic power. And I just learned so much by reading, and it's so cool at the point where I am now, where a lot of these writers that I've admired and I've learned from, I now get to meet in person, or I consider them friends. And at the same time, I'm still kind of, giddily like, that little bit of hero worship never really goes away because I've just learned so much from them.
Yeah, and what struck me when I read your books is that none of your female characters are typical fantasy heroines. They have learning curves, they make mistakes, they aren't all fashion plates, none of us are. And, they get frustrated by men trying to control, thwart, or manipulate them. So in other words, their experiences very much mirror the experiences of many women. So was this a conscious decision on your part to portray them this way, or did they all evolve organically as characters?
That was a pretty conscious goal for me because in both of my series, they're both inspired by or are historical fiction. And you can't, it's very important with historical fiction that you keep within the context of the time, as horrible as that may be. And like in the case of my current series with Breath of Earth and Call of Fire and Roar of Sky coming up, Ingrid Carmichael is a dark-skinned woman who has profound geomancy powers that she's not supposed to have by, you know, how men define the world. And she is, because of her skin color, she can't enter buildings through the front doors. She's always treated as a servant, as someone who is possibly illiterate or a heathen, to use the terminology of the time. And she has learned to adapt and become an actress and kind of grit her teeth and smile through it. But there's always this rage under the surface where she really is keenly aware of the injustice of it. And most readers these days have experienced that to some degree. And I mean, for me, I mean, I'm a very pasty skinned woman, so I certainly haven't gone through everything that Ingrid has. And sometimes it is hard to write about. And a lot of what I wrote about, what she experiences, is from books. The books also go into the experience of the Chinese in California during that time period, which was absolutely horrible. I mean, they were treated as inhuman and murdered outright. And my book goes into that. And that's why, that's drawing directly from history, as horrible as it is. And that's why all of my books in that series include a bibliography in the back, because I really encourage people, when they read the books and think, oh, this is so horrible, I mean, you know, how did you think of this? Then I want them to get to the back of the book and realize this is actually based on something that actually happened. And here are the actual source materials that they can go to. And I really hope some people do that and have their eyes opened and, you know, be disturbed, but also educated by it.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually. Speaking of the Chinese in California at the time, I actually, I think by coincidence, I actually have a degree in Chinese studies, which I specialized in, looking at women, Chinese women of the diaspora. And one of the things that is huge in that area is, you know, looking at the Chinese Exclusionary Act of, I think it's 1888, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and escalating through the 1890s, yeah.
Yeah, and it's horrible. You know, they're not allowed. The women are not allowed to immigrate into America. It was just all men. And if the men went back to China to get wives, they couldn't get back into the U.S. It was just horrible. But you know what struck me when you talk about historical context is, we had Mary Robinette Kowal last year, and she pointed something out. She made a point that was really interesting, and I don't know whether you'd agree with it. She said that there are people who object to portrayals of empowered women with agency in novels that obviously at least part historical. And she said, have people actually sat down and thought about, maybe because men are the ones who write history, that a lot of women who actually did have agency, who actually did defy the norm, or maybe it was even more common than not, these women actually existed. It's just that we don't know about them because men wrote the history.
Yeah, and I agree. And Mary is awesome. And yeah, I think she really hit the nail on the head there because, yeah, I mean, as they say, history is written by the victors. And, you know, in some cases, women weren't able to write at all. Or, you know, you have cases like in Japan where women developed their own writing and use that to communicate. And I think there have always been strong women, and women have always found a way. I mean, I don't think women with agency, and feminism as a principle itself, it's nothing new. It's always been there, but it's always been repressed and oppressed. And it's only now where, you know, like with the Me Too movement, where, you know, women are finally saying enough is enough. And, you know, I think the internet is very empowering in that way. And unfortunately, it also empowers people of the opposite viewpoint, but that's the way things go.
Oh yeah. So, you know, speaking of feminism, Oh, one point I think you might find interesting, just a little tidbit, is that I'm ethnic Chinese, and my father actually once said to me, he said, you should appreciate all the education you have. Not that I don't want to give it to you. Education is a very important thing to the Chinese community, especially overseas. That's the main way in which we raise ourselves, climb the ladder, the social ladder. And he said, if you were just born 100 years ago, your education would be at my mercy or your grandfather's mercy. We would decide whether or not we would hire a tutor to teach you if we could, if we had the means. And also, you probably have bound feet. I'm like, oh yeah, well, thank God bound feet has gone the way of the dodo. It has. It's literally the only form of violence against women that has been totally eradicated. And the best part was, is that it was eradicated by education.
Yeah.
It was the educated Chinese families who started the whole, we don't need bound feet. But yeah, so let's go back. That was a little bit of a detour, so let's go back into this. So, as a fantasy genre, steampunk seems to be unapologetically feminist and driven by distinctive and complex female characters, perhaps even more so than other forms of urban fantasy. Do you think this is an accurate assessment, and if so, why?
I think there's a pretty wide variety of steampunk. I mean, one of the interesting things about steampunk is that it's an aesthetic. And you still have some purists who think, oh, to be steampunk, it has to be in Victorian London and it can't go beyond that. But I think steampunk it really transcends genre and time setting and even the planet Earth. I mean, people say Firefly and Serenity are a form of steampunk. It's just with space opera dressing around it. But you can do post-apocalyptic, you can do pure mystery, you can go to more of the gaslamp fantasy. You can do like mine, where it's more Edwardian, and then you have the others that are more pure Victorian. You can go all different ways with steampunk, and I think there are definitely some authors like me who are more feminist, but there's a wide variety there. There was a number of years ago, gosh, it was before my novels came out, Charles Stross posted about how steampunk at the time was as a criticism was glorifying colonialism, and that, this was definitely a concern that people should be aware of. And I have encountered some books that do have that feel to them. I have not found any like that recently, because I think publishing as a trend is kind of aware of that and has moved away from it. But that is something that I had in mind when I was starting to write Breath of Earth. I wanted to write a steampunk feminist novel that had a very direct message that colonialism is bad and it has a lot of bad elements, and this is why, and showing how that affected the United States, and also just through the stories of everything that's going on around, how that's impacting the rest of the world, including China, the Philippines, everywhere that Japan was actually historically interested in at that time period. And in my upcoming book, I even take that into Hawaii and show what Native Hawaiians were also enduring. And to me, it's important that no matter what other people are doing, I want my values to seep in there, and I want to show that my characters can be strong women with agency in their time period and kind of stand up in my own way. And I'm fortunate that Harper Voyager is a publisher who's very supportive in that, and they publish some other really good steampunk books too that are along those lines.
Yeah, did me, or do they publish Mel Jean Brooke as well?
No, I don't think they did Mel Jean, no.
Okay, because she's another, I think she does steampunk as well, and they're quite feminist, her books. Okay, so you know what? When creating or writing female characters, do you ever feel pressured to make them likable or relatable?
Yeah, I do read and enjoy some books where the protagonist is definitely not someone I would want to know in person or be related to because they're unlikable. But for me, I do want my protagonist to be relatable, and especially to other women. Like if Octavia is going through a strange city and she's worried about other men attacking her and she feels vulnerable for that, women are going to relate to that. Same with Ingrid. And I want people to not only relate, but also learn from their experiences and what they go through.
Yeah. So, we have a question from the audience that ties into all of this. So it's from Anusha, and she says, some people think that depicting women in power and fantasies, quote unquote, unrealistic. So one of the reasons is because they say it doesn't accurately reflect the real world. What is your opinion on this?
I don't agree with that at all, because I think women have always been very empowered in the real world. They just have had to show that power in different ways than men can. Men can run for office, they can hold the swords, but the women kept the farm going. They bore the children. They were the healers, the keepers of medicine. They were also often keepers of libraries and journals. And the society anywhere in the world, it wouldn't exist without the women who were strong and kept, when the men were off fighting, who kept people alive and going, who kept humanity in existence. It was strong women. And that's true now too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of accurate in a way. I'm not sure in American culture, but in many cultures, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the movie, right? And the main character was like, oh no, dad is never gonna approve, let me go do computer classes. And her mom was like, the man might be the head of the family, but the woman is the neck. We can make him go whichever direction we want to, except that he doesn't really know about it. It is soft power, I think. Mm-hmm. A lot of the power that women yield, and I'm sure there are feminists out there probably screaming bloody murder at me for saying this, but it is true in so many cultures, especially those who still have where patriarchy is still very strong and has a very strong misogynistic streak in it, where the power that you can wield is soft power.
Yeah.
It's persuasive power. It's when you run the household and you have control over the household budget. It's yes. when you're your dad's favorite, and if your sister wants something and he's not going to give it to her, you can talk to dad and persuade him to do it. It's all the soft power. We shouldn't have to do that. Yeah. We should all just be equal, right? But it is, and I think a lot of, and Lynn Llewellyn brought a really interesting point out on Friday. She said when she was reading fantasy in the 1960s and 1970s, the author's idea of a strong woman was a man with breasts.
Yeah, and you still encounter that in some books. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you read it, you're like, we don't do things like this.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work. Okay, I mean, even if you watch, even you have characters like, I don't know if you agree with this, but even if you have characters like female characters who are physically imposing, like Jane Yellowrock, who is a 6 foot tall, muscled Native American heroine who can do a smackdown as well as any other male character. She's still essentially female. She's still we still see both sides of her, but it's very irritating. I don't know about you, but it's really irritating when you read a fantasy book and it's just a dude with breasts.
Yeah, and I encounter that, and it frustrates me because it's like, I want a strong woman. A strong woman shouldn't just be cussing every other word and just fighting all the men. I mean, that's because to me that falls into the stereotype of that's what men think feminists are. They all hate men kind of thing. And I consciously want to avoid that, and I want to make strong, well-rounded characters.
Yeah, we don't hate men. Oh, for the record, everyone out there, feminists do not hate men. We just hate the patriarchy and misogyny and sexism. We don't actually hate men, no. So In your opinion, how important is it to have strong female characters, not just in novels, but in pop culture as a whole?
Oh, representation is huge, and it's wonderful when I see the effect it has on kids. I mean, look at the reactions to something like Wonder Woman, and then Black Panther that just came out, which I haven't seen yet, but just seeing how I
You have
haven't
to. You
I
have.
haven't seen it yet.
It's so good. It is. It is. It is me coming out of the movie theater going, thinking, wow, these are women who have strength and who have agency, but it's not because they're angry. It's not because they were hurt, they have some trauma. No, they are who they are.
Yeah.
They do what they do, and the best part is that I don't think this is a spoiler, but the best part is King T'Challa relies so much on women around him, his mom, his sister, the general, his love interest, and they all have their roles to play.
Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing is that, should I say this? You haven't seen it yet.
I don't care about spoilers, but other people watching may not have seen it yet.
Oh yeah, well, okay, I'm not gonna say anything, but let's just say that the villain is the opposite, has the opposite attitude towards women. But yeah, it is representation so important, right? I mean, you see, I want to see girls today grow up thinking, yeah, we're represented.
Yeah.
It is not just a boys club for science fiction and fantasy and movies and music. We matter because we are half of the human race.
Yeah. And we can be strong. And I know I grew up loving Star Wars. Star Wars was literally, those were among my first words I spoke as a baby. And throughout my childhood, as much as I love those movies, I always wanted more women. And I would have loved for there to be a moment where Leia had a chance to really use the Force in the original movies, other than just hearing when Luke was in danger. And or to see her, have a lightsaber, to have a moment to shine like that. And she had different powers, and she was very strong in her own distinct way. But at the same time, I was like, I want to see the girl Jedi with a lightsaber. And then now with the new movies, though I can criticize different elements of the plots in them and, gripe about things like that, I really love Rey as a character because she is what I always wanted to see when I was a kid, because I wanted to be the girl with a lightsaber. So it means a lot to finally see that now.
Okay, so apparently my sound is going in and out. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, that is weird. Is everyone okay out there? Can you guys hear me? Is this easier? Is my sound okay now, guys? Come on. I know you guys have questions. If you have questions, please type them into the chat box next to the screen. Anusha will relay your questions to me, and I will read them out to Beth. If you have any burning questions for Beth, just ask them and we will read them out. Okay, so I think I'm echoing, but let's soldier on. Hang on. Okay. Let's move to relationships in your books. So the male-female relationships in your books run the gamut from the partnership of equals between Octavia and Alonso to the misogyny of the Dallow Man. So is the partnership and consent-based romance between Octavia and Alonso one that you deliberately developed, or did it happen organically as you told the story?
It was deliberate, and I have a similar type of relationship dynamic in my new series too, because for me, respect is sexy. And that straight out, that's what it comes down to. Respect, consent, those are sexy to me. And I'm not into the alpha male thing. I've tried to read a number of romances that focus on the alpha male. It's just not my thing. And I don't think I could ever personally write it because I don't find that attractive. When I want my characters to meet their love interest, I want it to be a relationship that's based on respect, and I want it to be a true partnership, which along those lines, I also am not really keen on love triangles. I don't like that. It's a trope. It's a really hackneyed way to increase drama, and I don't like that. My characters are already trying to stay alive as everyone's trying to kill them. They don't need that extra drama. They need each other and to rely on each other to survive. So to me, yeah, it is a very conscious thing, because it's something that is just, it goes to what I find attractive and what what I want to see more of in books, and that is that kind of relationship. I want it to be, I don't want my heroines to ever be in a situation where they have to save the bad boy, you know, the alpha male guy. That's not my thing. So that's not what I write.
Oh, sorry, I'm laughing here because I hate love triangles. And the only love triangle in a YA book actually that was actually resolved extremely well, believe it or not, is Cassandra Clare's Clockwork series.
Mm.
It is resolved in a way that you do not expect, and that actually factors in the fact that all the characters involved, except for one, live a long time. You know, they're pretty much immortal. It's, I'm not gonna say how it's resolved, guys, because some of you might not have read it yet, but it's the only one I know that has been resolved really well. Oh, and feedback from the audience. Oh, thank God for no love triangles.
Yay, we're not alone.
I mean, you think about it, you know, it's true what you say, because in fantasy books, especially urban fantasy, epic fantasy, where they're on an adventure, and a lot of times you're either chasing the bad guy or running away from the bad guy or trying to fix the world. I mean, sometimes you stop and think, who has time to stop and have this all these all these romantic drama and have sex and stuff? No, we're gonna die. We're all gonna die if we don't do
And that's it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you snapping each other and squabbling over this? You're getting shot at. You have higher priorities here, people.
So, you know, but we, you know, in your books, but you know, you still show the flip side though. You know, we see Octavia having to fend off the unwanted advances of the creepy Mr. Drury, who also tried to force her into marriage. Ew. So the line between consent and coercion isn't always very clear in fantasy books. Do you think this is an issue that writers in the genre are tackling, or do you think that it hasn't been fully addressed yet?
I think it is something that is increasingly addressed right now, which I think is awesome, especially the issue of consent. And a lot of times, I mean, talking about how women are developed as characters, one of the most horrible tropes along those lines is that the woman has to be raped in order to develop as a character, you know, go through some terrible trauma like that. And that just, oh, drives me nuts. And a couple years ago, I used to read Slush for a magazine, and it blew my mind how often the stories that would come in and how many of those relied on that. And that was like the only way they knew how to develop women as a character. And it's sad. And I think issues like consent need to be addressed. And I really like it when characters are very blunt and upfront about it. In my book, Call of Fire, which is the second book in my current trilogy, my characters have a love scene, and issues of consent are very bluntly addressed. And to me, I felt like I tried to do it in a way that was very realistic, you know, the kind of shy, awkward banter, you know, where obviously they're interested in each other, but they say things that mature adults should say and go into it in a very responsible way. And I would love to see more of that, just straight up. I mean, you know, there are things that mature adults should talk about, and it may not always be easy, but I think it's the right way to go. And I think especially in YA, I think it's definitely becoming more prevalent there because it's YA can be very upfront about, you know, the sexual activity of teens and just romance in general. And I like that it's becoming more of a topic instead of just relying on the old method of, oh, this is the only, you know, we can only here, let's assault the woman and then she becomes a developed character because she's endured this great trauma. And I'm so glad we're moving away from that horrible way of doing it.
Yeah, and the flip side is what Chuck Wendick calls, you know, he was talking. I don't know if you saw that article, that blog rant he had about 2 years ago about why you use the rape of women and the terrorizing of kids just to define man pain. He
Yeah.
goes, you know, just so that the hero has something, you know, some sort of motivation to, you know, the stereotypical, oh no, they came in, they raped my wife, they killed my kids, so now I'm gonna go off and have revenge. And that is so old, and that is not healthy at all.
And Hollywood is really the worst perpetrator of that right now, because even though I think authors are moving away from that more often and having a harder time selling it, Hollywood still relies very heavily on that. And if I see any movie or show that the whole basis of the man's rage is the wife is dead and probably the kids are dead too, and it's not done, you know, in any kind of unique way. I mean, I think of, you know, an interesting way to do that would be What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams did that in a very different kind of way. But then I think of so many other TV shows where that's done, and that's the whole setup. He's lost everyone, and now he's angry, and now he's going to solve the murder or do this, and like, I'm just like, I won't even watch it anymore. I'm so sick of that.
Yeah, and then there's the whole Stockholm syndrome thing where, you know, the hero kidnaps the heroine, and then the heroine falls in love with him. I'm like, what?
Oh, creepy. Ugh.
No.
Yeah, and see, if I start reading a book and it does that, I'm like, nope, close it. It's not for me.
I mean, if it were me or any other woman who has a wits about her, would be, you know, looking for a way to get a rock or something, hit him on the head and run.
Yeah.
Which is more realistic than you know, oh, I'm gonna fall in love with my captor. No, that's weird. Okay, so anyway, let's get back to this. So violence against women occurs in many forms throughout your stories.
Mhm.
Why did you decide to include it as a major theme? And can you share some of the ways in which you woven it into your stories?
Well, I include it because it's realistic, and that's the way of the world, unfortunately, especially again, because I'm writing within a historical context. It's all the more present because there were forced marriages and women were regarded as, you know, illiterate or servants because they simply had different color of skin or because they were wearing servants' clothes. Oh, you know, they're a simpleton, you know, things like that. And that was a fact of life. And that's why I try and build that into my fiction. And as far as examples, oh gosh, it's an ever-present problem. I think of Ingrid, like in Breath of Earth, and she has these profound geomancy abilities. When an earthquake happens, she takes in the energy of the earthquake and can effectively stop the earthquake by sucking up the energy like a sponge, and then she can lash out and use that power. And yet she can't be outed for that because she's the only woman with that power. So she's raised by her mentor, Mr. Sakaguchi, and she's a secretary for the Geomancy Guild within San Francisco. So she's surrounded by all the so-called experts, and they treat her dismissively and derisively. And it's that subtle violence and control of being gaslit constantly by being treated like you're nothing, you know, I'm treating you as nothing, so you are nothing. You know, your opinion doesn't matter. You're a servant, go do this, woman, you know, do this, girl. You know, where they, you know, it may be someone that she's known for a decade and the guy won't use her name. It's like, you know, do this, girl. Subtle ways that men within the patriarchy control women. And that's what they're raised to do. They're raised to think, hey, she has dark skin, she's a woman, you know, she'll do what she's supposed to do. And that's how control was done then, and how people are still controlled these days too.
Yeah, and I think a variation of that is mansplaining. I mean,
Yes.
how how many times have you seen on Twitter, for example,
Yes.
a woman who's an expert, astrophysicist or a doctor or engineer, and then they made a statement, or immigration lawyer, and then we have these men coming in going, well, actually,
Yes.
um, and then they get, and of course, all the women are not going to take this lying down and then just lob back at them. Well, I have degrees in such and such. You,
Yeah.
it is really galling. It is really galling to know that you have all these abilities and you are an expert in it, and yet you still get mansplained. It
Yeah.
is. It is very irritating. I mean, Ingrid, her fortitude is admirable because she puts up with it day in and day out. At some point, most women would snap. I should think.
Yeah. And in the course of the book, she does eventually snap because she comes more into her power, and she is in places where she has to snap in order to save her own life. But at the same time, because she is raised within her society, she still has to she has that inner conflict of, I know I'm not supposed to act like this, but but damn it, I need to live. So she has to act out anyway. And going to modern references too, even something, and not just talking about mental domination, but physical domination, like man spreading on a bus or in a theater or at a sporting event, where, I mean, I've dealt with that, where the man's knees are wide and give me absolutely no space at all. And I mean, it's a dominating behavior. And I am so sick of that. And my husband knows one of these days I'm going to snap too.
I like the European. Some European men do the way they sit. I like it. They actually cross their legs, and they don't take up that more
Yeah.
space than you need to. I mean, you don't need to. You don't need to do that.
No, and yeah, it's a cultural thing that needs to change. It really comes down to the culture for men, and that, that they aren't supposed to cross their legs like that in America because it's not manly, which is ridiculous.
Okay, guys, you don't see my face, but my face is like eyeballs. Stories are one of the most powerful ways of bringing about change. And in your opinion, how can authors strike a balance in their storytelling between raising awareness about tough human rights issues like violence against women and telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
Well, a lot of that comes down to probably writing a rough draft that may be pedantic and preachy, and then revising intensely and relying on beta readers and their agent or their editor, and really listening to that feedback so that they can get that balance right. Because it is very difficult. And one of the hardest things about writing historical fiction, especially in the beginning of the book, is avoiding info dumps. Because the structure of the world may be Earth and maybe alternate history, but it's changed in so many fundamental ways that it's tempting to just say, okay, here's all this historical information to found the world. And it would read very boring if that stayed in that form in the final draft. So a lot of it comes down to being open to feedback, in some cases, maybe even hiring a sensitivity reader, or just relying on anyone who can give good, solid advice to help them get that into shape, and to know when to edit, to dial back, and also when to go a little bit further and deeper to bring out the deep emotion and the historical truths that need to come out.
Sensitivity readers seem to be a pretty new thing. Are they new, or have they always been around?
They're new with that term, but I think it's always been around, because I think most writers are humble enough to realize that we're going to make major errors, and we want to represent people correctly, and we rely on people to help us to see those problems, because a lot of times authors are the worst judge of their own books, as far as getting the pacing right or getting characters right, and that feedback means everything. And yeah, so sensitivity readers, I think it's definitely a new thing, and it's a new job title, but I think it provides an important function to get representation right.
Yeah. So let's go to wider pop culture. So, geek culture in general, including science fiction and fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it is still too male dominated, despite a rising number of prominent, well respected, and well known female authors such as yourself. Plus, there is still plenty of hostile, misogynist, and sexist behavior by male geeks towards female geeks. Exhibit number one, the new Ghostbusters.
Mm.
And what, and exhibit number two, Wonder Woman. So what do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books, more welcoming for women and girls?
I think it really comes down to women demanding a voice and screaming and making sure that the world knows, hey, we're here, we're geeks, we're legitimate geeks. We don't have to prove that to you. We just are. I mean, the whole geek girl or fake geek girl, phenomenon. And yeah, it comes down to making our presence known. And that can be so frustrating sometimes because inevitably it seems like once a month there's some major news venue out there that puts out a list of here are, 20 books like, going off any trend like, Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or something. And then you read the list and it's like, 20 books and it's like 19 men or something like that. Or, and that it happens all the time. And it's in fantasy and it's in science fiction too. And I get frustrated for friends of mine or authors that I admire who are literally there on Twitter waving their hands and saying, I've been writing this since 1984. I have, 20 some books. Trust me, I'm here and I've been writing. Why can't you see that? And one thing I think that is helping open some people's eyes comes down to reading challenges, where some people, I think it's on Reddit Fantasy and some other groups like that, where they actually put out a challenge where every month you have a different goal, like you're supposed to read a new author, or you're supposed to, find, here you read a fantasy author who is African or Southeast Asian, or a woman author, or an author who's under 20. And it actually makes people kind of do a bingo card and makes them go out of their normal narrow box of, I only read books like this. And it makes them actually open their eyes and go, I would never have picked that up on my own, but I'll read it because of the challenge. And then they find something new that they love. And I think that's a great way of kind of opening people's eyes, because it comes down to a cultural change. And it's not going to be an overnight thing. But I think in my lifetime, it's certainly been, I've seen progress just in recent years. But then we also we have to deal with the sometimes violent backlash along with that too. And that's scary and frustrating.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to drag them kicking and screaming into it.
Yep.
It's what is interesting is that women actually write some of the freshest, most imaginative fantasy and science fiction around because of our very different perspective. It's been a boys' club a white, straight male boys' club for the last how many years? But you see, the irony is the founder of science fiction is Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
She wrote Frankenstein. And then after that, everyone kind of forgot about her. And we get this whole, 200 years of male authors. Not that I don't like to read someone like H.G. Wells, for example. But it does get samey after a while, especially in epic fantasy. And you're right. Every time anyone asks about your top 10, top 20 fantasy series of books, it's always men. And if you want anyone to state female, to include female authors, you have to say about top 10 female fantasy writers. Yeah. And you're like, why should we qualify it with female?
Yeah.
Why?
And it should go beyond the binary restriction anyway, because that eliminates other people whose voices should be heard too.
Yeah, and we see this so much. I don't know about you, but see this so much in fantasy and science fiction groups on Facebook, for example. Like, I'm a member of Fantasy Faction. I don't know if you're also a member of that group, but there has been a lot of many arguments there where people keep say, well, who do you recommend? I would like to read, this type of fantasy. Who would you recommend? And then everyone seems, all the answers seem to be all the same, all the males.
Yeah.
Male authors. And then if you point out that, yeah, there are female authors too who actually do this better, there are people who would just jump on you and go, well, you're being sexist because we should judge authors only by their stories and not their gender or their sex. Some people laughably even say, I don't even read the author's name.
Yeah.
How do you not read the author's name when the author's name is like plastered across the cover of the book? And I mean, it is very frustrating, and it's frustrating for me because I read more female authors than male authors, and every time this sort of question comes up in the groups that I'm in, I always have a list of female authors, including you, including Lynn, including Faith Hunter, including a whole bunch, of people, of female authors. And then whenever I put it up, everyone goes, well, yeah, but that's urban fantasy, or yeah, but that's steampunk. And it is all fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And epic fantasy, if I put Ken Liu's name in and they go like, well, it's not proper epic fantasy. Yes, it is, because just because it's not pseudo medieval grim dark, everybody kills everybody else and has steel and armor and and it's all white, doesn't mean that it is not fantasy. Sorry guys, I'm just ranting here to death because we're just ranting here right now. We devolved into ranting because it is an ongoing problem. It is an ongoing issue that has to be fixed, but I guess it's going to take time, right? I mean, there are more cons now, I think.
Well, and it's going to take time, and it's really going to take. It'll come down to raising boys and girls to open their eyes and look outside the box, to define what is fantasy to you, and not just think of it being pseudo Europe white guys, but looking beyond that and realizing that read silk punk, like Ken Liu's books. Look at Kevin Hearn's awesome book that just came out that has a huge diverse range of characters within it, of all different colors and sexualities, men and women, and it's just fantastic. And look at all the women out there who are writing fantastic stuff. I mean, Elizabeth Moon and her Paxonarian books, she started publishing those in the 80s. And she's and then has also done incredible space opera books like Vada's War. And yet I so rarely see her included on those lists of here are the authors you should try if you like Game of Thrones. And it's so frustrating, and it's just going to take time.
Yeah, and there's Lois McMaster Bujold. She's been writing so long. If you're talking about diversity and all, again, there's Lynn Llewellyn. We were kind of shocked when, Subterranean Press, they publish a lot of special editions of authors' books, and they do publish a wide range, including lots of female authors. But again, we were actually surprised that they haven't done editions of Night Runner and the Night Runner series, which is very LGBT friendly. Mm-hmm. It is very female friendly. It has a huge community of fans. So, it is going to take time. And, you brought up raising boys and girls. So you yourself are a parent, right? You have a 12-year-old son.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So what do you do? I mean, from a parental point of view, what are the things you think parents can and should do to get their kids to prevent their kids from committing violence against women, and to get boys especially to support efforts to eradicate misogyny, sexism, and violence against women and the patriarchy? What do you think parents can do?
It comes down to being blunt and not being subtle about it. In my case, I have to be blunter than many parents because my son has autism. And he can't read faces well, and he doesn't pick up on emotions. He can't, if he's shown pictures of, someone who's crying as part of a sequence, he can't really identify what led to them crying. And so for him, It's about being very blunt and saying straight up why we don't do something or why this is bullying. And when we see things on the news that are being discussed, like the transgender bathroom bill last year, I could tell he was kind of curious and was wondering what was going on. And we haven't even had the full birds and the bees talk about it. And we didn't have to at that point to address that topic because it was about, these are people who need to use the bathroom, and they need to use the bathroom where they feel safe and comfortable, and they're not a threat to other people, and they should be allowed to use the bathroom. And he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it was just putting it in blunt, direct terms, and then being able to say, if you have any questions, I'm here, talk to me. And for some parents, that's very difficult, because sometimes it is a sensitive topic, but it's part of growing up, and it's growing up no matter how old you are, even for parents. I mean, we never stop growing and learning too. And I want to be there, and I want to help him to be a compassionate, sensitive person. And to me, that's the greatest legacy is seeing him. I want him to grow up and be an active and kind member of society. And that comes down to him treating people correctly, regardless of their gender, and standing up for them if necessary. If he does see someone being harassed, for him to have the strength and the voice to say, hey, something's wrong here and we need help. And that's hard, and it's hard for him, especially because he doesn't always have that voice. But it's something that we're working on, and I'm really proud of the strides that he's made.
Yeah, and it is, what is interesting is, you brought up the same method that many of the other authors who are also parents brought up, which is you have to talk about it. You have to repeatedly talk about it all while throughout the kids' growing up years, so that the message can actually sink in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't. It won't. And I'm a tutor. I'm a teacher. I teach on weekends and in the evenings, so I can pay the bills. So I can actually do stuff like this, for Pixel Project, because everyone's a volunteer. And I am like you. I am very blunt with the kids. You have to be really blunt. You have to say sexism, wrong. Homophobia, wrong. Discrimination against trans people, wrong. Bullying in schools, anyone who's different from you, wrong. Just you need to. It's amazing. You can't be tactful, can you? I mean, with the kids, you have to.
You can't, and kids are smart, and you have to respect that. I mean, they know a lot of things that, I know when I was a kid, I was always miffed that I was often disrespected by adults. So I want to make sure I respect my son and other kids. And I know I don't want him to learn from watching TV in Hollywood, because the messages he gets there are going to be very blunt in a way I don't agree with.
Yeah, and we can see now, especially with the gun issue, with the recent mass shooting in Portland and the way the kids are rising up, kids know they're not stupid. They can do a lot of stuff together, with their friends if they want to, and they often do it together with their peers. They instinctively know that there's power in doing things together as a collaboration, especially the younger generation now. And it's amazing to see them just call out the adults and say, you guys are behaving like kindergartners about this.
Yeah.
And who's behaving badly? The adults who are sending kids death threats.
I know. But that's the internet and places like Twitter for you, because I've seen so many women go through that on Twitter, especially. And I've had my own dealings with trolls online. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we hosted, guys, if you're listening to this, sometimes the Pixel Project hosts a Twitter chat about specific violence against women issues. And one of the most, I would say successful, but that's not really the right word for it, but the most popular Twitter chats they've had was with the hashtag cyber VAW, cyber law. which is cyber violence against women, all the stories that you hear coming out during the discussion, they make your hair stand on end.
Yeah.
And I mean, here, with the Pixel Project, we have a policy where we do not engage with abusers on Twitter, for example.
Yeah.
The important thing is to keep everyone safe, because we need to be safe in order to keep doing the work that we do.
Yeah.
And anyone who tries to pull any of that funny business, we just block them and report them. But that system really isn't working, is it? It is not. They still find ways of getting around that.
Well,
Doxing.
yeah, they can just make another account, or they can enlist bots. Bots are such a terrible issue on Twitter when it comes to any hashtag like that.
Yeah. So, it is, we trying to get anything into a safe space it's becoming an increasingly difficult task on social media to ensure that spaces are safe for everybody.
Yeah.
So let's go to the final questions of today, because we're already gone past the hour. Look, everyone out there, thank you for joining us today. If you have, we're going into the finals of leg of the whole hangout. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. Anusha will relay them to me, and we can ask Beth before we wrap up. So anyway, so you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. So this might be a captain obvious question, because we've been discussing that anyway. So why do you support the cause to end violence against women, and what do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
Well, I'm supporting the Pixel Project because this is a very personal topic. I'm a woman. I'm friends with many other women. And I hate that we are at a point where this still exists. I read so many historical books as part of my research and all that, and I think, oh my goodness, 100 years ago, why did we treat people like this? And I think, oh, well, good, at least 100 years have passed, and we've evolved past that. And then I go on Twitter and I just go, things haven't changed. Women are still abused and constrained, and it needs to stop. And as an author, I feel that responsibility to be part of that change and to write about women who are strong, but not in the stereotypical way. And I also want to write stories about young girls who are 10, 11 years old at that very important age where they're starting to grow up and become aware of the larger world. And I want to write about the strength that comes in that age. And I want that to be something that only inspires girls, but boys too. And I think it's very important that we do reach the boys, because I think that's where the change is going to happen, is by talking and addressing the boys and the young men and showing them that Wonder Woman can be just as awesome a movie, or that a new Ghostbusters can be an awesome movie. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a boys club anymore. And that it's still fun and still enjoyable, and that there's nothing sissy or emasculating about that. It's just something that is cool and fun.
Yeah, and Black Panther is very important in this regard, because we see the Dora Milaje, we see the spies, we see the Queen Mother, we see that the tech whiz, and they're all women, and we see T'Challa respecting his mom, respecting his girlfriend, respecting his sister, deferring to his general when she says no, this just won't work.
Yeah.
And what struck me is, I think when you go in to see it, is that how Margaret Atwood said once that men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Women are afraid that men will kill them.
Yeah.
T'Challa isn't afraid when the women around him laugh at him.
Yeah.
He just goes, oh, okay, I did stupid stuff, so I deserve to be laughed at. And I hopefully boys and young men who watch this realize It's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be human. It's okay to treat women around you with respect. It shouldn't be it's okay too, right? It should be automatic.
Yeah.
Women are people too. LGBTQIA people are people too.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
People who don't share the same skin color as you, we are people too.
Yeah.
We just need to get there. Oh, we've got a remark from the audience. Christina Hawthorne says, "An excellent conversation. I'm so glad I took the time to listen. Thank you."
Oh, well, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think we better wrap up soon because everyone has been so patiently listening to us talk about this. And I'm sure some of you, if some of you want to donate, let's put me on screen now so I can actually share the slide. Oh, hey everybody. Hi, Christina. Hi, everybody who's here. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I am going to share this little slide that will show you where to go to make your donation. Now, here's the good news, guys. We are aiming to raise $5,000. We've already raised $1,825 just this opening weekend. So we really hope that you guys will help us get to 2,000 by the middle of this week. Or you can wait till Thursday or Friday, check in on Friday, there's new goodies there. But there's still plenty of goodies out right now. So you can donate to get goodies via our Rally Up fundraising page. You go to http://is.gd/R4P Rally Up IWD 2018. It's case sensitive. So I'm going to just leave this up while I talk so you can actually take this down. And Anusha, who's the mod in the Q&A box, she'll also type it in there for you. And you can find out more about Read for Pixels, our Read for Pixels program at is.gd/Read for Pixels. Again, it is case sensitive. Now, we've been doing Read for Pixels as one of our programs for 5 years now. We are about to hit our 100. Well, that's a bad term. We're about to reach our 100th author this September, and we're so glad that Beth is here with us. And you know what? We've got lots of Beth's goodies. Beth's Steampunk and Snickerdoodle goodie bundle has been snapped up already, even before we got on this Hangout by Jamie Mayer in Washington State. So thank you again, Jamie. But if you go to the Rally Up page, you can actually see plenty of other goodies. Kandari Blake has this really cool goodie bundle that has playing cards in it that she's had specially made with all her characters. Yeah, they're cards. If you play card games, that'd be great for you. Collector's item. There's I think Beth, you'll really like this.
Okay.
There's a Girl Power YA bundle, which includes Leigh Bardugo's Wonder Woman Warbringer, Susan Dennard's brand new Sight Witch, and Juliana Spink Mills. She's an up-and-coming YA author. She's got her Heartblade series there as well with some postcards. So go and have a look. It's all really great reading. If you want to put into practice what Beth and I were talking about, which is to talk to the kids, these books are going to be a great starting point. If you have teenage girls and boys, consider making the donation, and the authors will sign the books for you. They will sign and personalize the books for you, and they will send it directly to you. The books are not with us. The books are with the authors, and you will get it straight from them. They will post it, sign it, wrap it, post it themselves because they feel that this is a really important cause. And please give generously because we want to reach $5,000. We want to reach it by the end of March. Hopefully we'll reach it before that. And if you want to learn more, let me stop sharing this. Okay, so if you want to learn more about violence against women, because there are lots of different types of violence against women, it's that huge. You can go to our website at www.thepixelproject.net. We've got loads of 101 articles there. You can also connect from there to our 16 days of 16 for 16 campaign, where we have almost 100 articles on various ways things you can do to stop violence against women. Or you can go to our Facebook page. You just type in the Pixel Project. Go there. We have resources that we share everyday news items, lists, everything that you would need to learn more about the issue. If you're on Twitter, find us at at Pixel Project. I think Beth follows us, right? I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Beth is with us here every day between 8 p.m. to midnight EST. We tweet helplines for rape hotlines and domestic violence hotlines to over 30 countries every day from 8 p.m. to midnight EST. And we do tweet out the helplines, national helplines for North America from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. EST as well. So you can catch that information at those times if you need it. Please take them down. You might not know who needs it. And let's put Beth back online. Okay, so Beth, do you have any final announcements you want to make? Do you have anything coming up next? Any releases? Any cons you're going to?
Well, I'll be at the Tucson Festival of Books this coming weekend, where I have a panel on Saturday down in Tucson, Arizona. And then I'll be at Phoenix Comic Fest coming up at the end of May. And yeah, I'll mostly be doing a lot of local things around Arizona this year. And as far as other releases, I have my short story collection, Red Dust and Dancing Horses and Other Stories, it is very woman-centric, and it has a lot of stories about women and young girls. And people say it's empowering, and that just makes me so happy that they pick up on the themes in that I'm not even aware of. And so that's already out. And then the third book in my Blood of Earth trilogy is Roar of Sky, and that comes out in October from Harper Voyager.
Oh, that's awesome. You've got a busy year ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, guys, so I'm going to say, if you want to find out about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, because every dollar donated releases one pixel, so we can actually see the arm and the shirt of the role model now. It's been progressing slowly, but, the geek and readership fandoms are very determined about this. So, so just go there and go to http://reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about it, to have a peek at the arm and the shirt. And guys, so thank you so much. Have a good day wherever you are in the world, or good night wherever you are. Beth and I are gonna say bye now. I'm gonna put Beth on screen. So we're gonna say bye now. Thank you so much for spending this evening or this morning with us.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. And thanks to everyone who participated too.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, we will see you another time. Before we go, next week at 6 p.m. PST, we are hosting Carrie Vaughn. Carrie wrote the best-selling Kitty Norville series, which also deals with violence against women and domestic, including domestic violence and rape and sexual assault. But it's a really, really good series.
It is.
Yeah, so tune in then. You can go to our Facebook page to check out how to get to that web page, to the YouTube page. So okay, guys, so have a good night and a good evening wherever you are in the world. This is Beth and me signing out. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you again.